Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nicky Vaux, and I'm your host. I am a boat owner, a marinas owner, an international conference presenter, and a huge advocate for boating. I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous. It's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there, enjoying the waterways. So, let's set off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. I have Jasper Smith, so we're going to continue that interview in a second episode of the Boat Princess podcast. Have you followed me on LinkedIn as Nicky Vaux, the Boat Princess? I'll be posting details on what's going on in the boating industry, and you can also connect with me if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast and share your business story. So Jasper, we've just spoken about the amazing propulsion system you've got in your boats, and that allows you an incredible range of 7,000 nautical miles, which, I mean, you know, even if you're going from Japan to Canada, that's only 5,000. So that's a brilliant scenario with your boats. Was that a really important element to you for them?
What was more important was efficiency. So the range doesn't come because it's got, we're towing tankers of fuel behind us or anything like that. It just comes because the hull is designed on a racing yacht hull, modified for a motorboat. So it's super efficient. And, we use very clever anti-fouls and things like that, which are super slippery.
As we do on racing yachts.
Yeah, exactly the same sort of stuff. And so the range comes because the hull is really slippery, really efficient through the water, very low power for a vessel that size. And just as an example, on paper, it will never be quite like this, but the power requirement to drive the vessel through a calm sea state at 5-6 knots is about the equivalent of boiling 5 kettles. So it's like super efficient in terms of motion through the water and stuff. We'll have to test that, right? It may be more, maybe less, right? But on paper, it's really interesting. The range really comes from that drive for efficiency, which has gone all the way through the Explorer series. So slippery hulls, really efficient systems and design inside, making sure the interiors feel separated in a sense. One of the things you find in a lot of modern yachts is everything looks the same. Mm-hmm. So when you're at sea for 3 months, that sort of drives you mad. It's like, boats become prisons. And so we've done a lot of work to make sure that, each cabin area feels very different look and feels, different
interesting
textures, colors, lighting configurations, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that really helps make you feel that you're in a home rather than a sort of a hotel room or something. Or something like that. And
I noticed with your finishes, you've gone fairly simplistic. So, there's no heavy tiles and things like that going on in the bathroom. So there are sort of 2 basic styles that we have. One is a sort of standard configuration. The second one is more of a boutique type thing, which is sort of based on maybe some of the aesthetics that someone like Soho House might have or something like that. So it's sort of, quite rich, lots of sort of, nice woods, inlaid doors and things like that. So nice. Yeah.
I think it will work. I think that will work really well. But the range, so the range comes from, efficiency of the hull, also quite large tanks. So it's about 19,000 litres of fuel.
Yeah.
So that's equivalent to what you might find in sort of Nordhavens or Flemings or, vessels like that. But the range, just because of the efficiency of the hull, is, 2-3x of those other types of boats. So, and the reason for that is is, that filling up these boats is a bit of a, takes a while. Obviously, fuel has different prices in different points. So it enables you to fill up in, say, Gibraltar, where fuel is really cheap, and then run for a whole year, and then decide where you want to fill up again. But it also means you can sort of go from, the UK to Greenland, or to Iceland to Greenland, across to New York and back again on one tank.
Yeah, brilliant.
You can do these massive circuits.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That was a bit of the tip of the day from Jasper, wasn't it, about cheap fuel in Gibraltar? Did you hear that one? So, all right. So you've created these amazing. I noticed you've partnered with Garmin for your electronics.
Yeah.
Was there a particular reason behind that brand for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at Garmin as an organisation, the fact that it is sort of ambidextrous, and it's doing sort of lots of different sports, and it's doing sort of wearables as well as sort of marine nav and stuff. For a brand like Arxon, which really stands for adventure, there's lots of synergies. So as we've just launched our adventure business, and through that adventure business, we've got people that will take you up Everest, or take you free diving in blue holes in Bahamas, or wherever you want to go, or help you haul a sledge across Greenland, or so. Having a partnership with a brand that helps us in these other areas as well is great. But their marine nav gear, in our view, is extraordinary. And the fact that they've got such a successful business just means the level of investment in innovation and R&D goes way beyond what a lot of other companies are able to do.
Yeah.
So I think they're great.
Yeah,
but it's really that shared spirit of adventure, I think, is the thing that makes it most interesting for us.
Yeah. And the fact that you can use your watch to change the stereo in your boat is always fun too.
Yes, right? It's super. That in fact was the overriding reason for going with Garmin. Yeah.
So and I did find it wonderful that and this is what comes from somebody who decides to build a boat that has done a lot of boating and done a lot of exploring. You design the boat based on how you use it, as opposed to just being a naval architect and understanding how it works that way. So your lazarette, for example, is like a boy's toy room. It's full of this incredible space for all of the adventure gear and it's just, and that workshop space. I mean, absolutely
awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's a boy's, toy
or
room.
Girls.
It is.
Or girls.
Or girls, yeah. And I think it's
absolutely.
like, it's interesting. It's some of the most adventurous people we have in our business are girls, They're the ones, like we've got a lot of really extraordinary people, but there's a couple of people in particular who are like really extreme divers and things like that. So I think it's just, we just look at it as, if you want the ultimate adventure product, you've got to have the infrastructure internally and externally to be able to go off and do these wonderful things. So it has, big dive compressors, it has, rooms for drying out wetsuits or dry suits. It has got, a small machine shop on it, workbenches, that sort of stuff. It's got storage for motorbikes, kayaks, all sorts of bits. All the stuff you sort of go, on other boats that we've owned. It's like, well, we've got there. Now what?
Yeah.
So we haven't got a dive compressor. We haven't got any kayaks. We haven't. There's no room for all this stuff. So the idea behind the 85 was, let's just make as much volume in the lazarette as possible to put all the stuff that really creates the ingredients for these unforgettable, adventures that you can go on.
Yeah. And for people like myself, it's the ridiculous things that you look at and you go, look at that head height. In a lazarette.
Yeah. No, it is mad, isn't it? Yeah. I was on it yesterday and we was, I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but Ewan, who is the COO of the business, he's in, I don't know how high he is, but he must be 2-something meters. So his prerequisite for this is like, I need to be able to walk anywhere without banging my head. So that means I've got like 6 feet above me. I'm fine.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Have you ever heard that story about the Panamera design, the Porsche Panamera?
No.
That the designer was, I think he was 7 foot or something crazy. So he wanted to make sure he could sit in the back seat, which is why I have Panamera, because I've got tall sons. So I can get them comfortably in the back seat of my car, because he was, and that's why, it doesn't look quite as pretty as it should at the back, because it doesn't slope
so that he
down.
can sit there.
But it's designed specifically for tall people to be able to sit comfortably in the back in a sports car.
That's very clever.
Yeah. So there you go. So let's, before we leave these amazing boats and go on to the other things that you do with Uxon, the 85, you don't have to buy the whole thing, do you? There's a little thing you're doing here that's making it more accessible to people. So tell us about that.
Yes, we run a co-ownership program in parallel to outright purchase, and I think it's fascinating to me, because we're in the midst of the largest wealth transfer in history. I think there's like $63 trillion worth of capital migrating from the older generation to the younger generation. And the younger generation have a very different philosophy to the one, I had and my parents have, which was, if I own this boat, we can go and use it for holidays and things like that. The younger generation, I think of it in a slightly different way. And so this concept of discrete shared ownership and syndicates works really well, which is, the co-owners may never meet. And for each of those co-owners, it feels entirely like their vessel. And it feels, for the time they have it, they're home from home. But it can do 7,000 miles. So it's like this really cool thing. But yeah, so co-ownership, I think, is something that the marine industry has really struggled with. But I think it's something that will happen in quite a big way over the next sort of 10 years or so. And the idea is keep it as simple as possible. So a group of owners co-own an asset. There's a time allocation software that we use that enables people to book the time they want away. If there are any conflicts in that time, they just, whoever compromises goes to the top of the list next time. So it's sort of quite transactional. Over a course of a few years of ownership, everybody gets to do what they want to do. But what it means for the vessel is extraordinary. It means the vessel can have a really long itinerary, and you can plan these multi-month trips. And you can hop on, hop off, and you can go to Svalbard or go to Greenland or go to the Med, or, go across to the Caribbean for winter. And you're not bearing anything like the full cost of the crew, the maintenance, the fuel, the headache of it being sat in the marina for 7 months without being used. So it goes to this point I was talking about earlier about designing products for maximum efficiency. There's 0 point in designing a boat for 50 hours usage of a year, which is what the design envelope for a lot of these boats is, that just sits in the marina 98% of its time. It's a waste of the raw materials. It's a waste of the asset itself. It's zero use to anybody, except for the 2-3 weeks that it gets to be used. And that just doesn't feel like a valuable use of my capital.
Yeah.
So the co-ownership thing, I think, is a really exciting area. And, we started pushing this a couple of years ago, and there's a few other companies doing the same. But my guess will be there won't be a single yacht company that doesn't have a co-ownership program within the next 5 years. So,
I agree with you, because the consumer is changing too. So the consumer is wanting to turn up to a boat that's ready to go, and they don't have to worry about it when it's not being used. And they want it clean, ready to go, linen on board, everything done, petrol, fuel's in it. Food tank's empty, everything, and ready to go, which when it's a syndication model that is managed and that is done. So, and it does have that environmental piece of, if it's a syndication and there's 10 owners on this one boat, then that's a far better environmental scenario than one boat for somebody, as you say, that uses it for a few days a year.
Yeah, for sure. So, and you look at it, we try and bake in conservation and research to every trip that we have. And so you look at just from a research perspective. So the global national fleet of research vessels is under 50 vessels. So obviously the ocean is the 70+% of Earth's surface. There's under 50 vessels globally doing research on the ocean funded through government. So if you can create a fleet of vessels that are augmenting that work by hosting scientists and researchers and conservationists and things like that, that's really powerful to me. I'm really motivated by that idea. So having these boats that are able to go, pretty much anywhere in the world, that are designed to always be on, and that have a group of co-owners. There's normally about 5 co-owners in our boats, just so that everybody gets the right allocations of time.
Yeah.
That feels like a really valid model. So, the owners get to do really extraordinary work, and have amazing adventures, and the boat's used all the time, which means the systems and the processes on it are constantly sweated. So it's like a car, everything likes to be used.
Absolutely.
Machinery likes
boats
to be
are very
used.
much like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think it's the direction of travel.
Yeah.
And
does that mean, for example, if say 2 of the owners want to explore Greenland and it's gone to Greenland, you're then using it for 2 owners for a period of time in Greenland, as opposed to one owner that would take it there and then have a week there and then
what tends to happen is that
else.
the owners will agree an itinerary, an approximate itinerary that's 24 months long. So there'll be 12 months that's pretty locked down, and then an ambition for the following 12 months. And that itinerary may be, let's go down to Australia or something like that. And so there'll be an itinerary planned along that line. You just book your time, get on, get off, and just check in. So it's really up to the owners whether they want to do the long relocations or whether they just want to go to the destination and enjoy the time within that field.
Yeah, what an amazing option.
So I think I think it will work really well. And I think the mechanisms for doing it will change as well. So, we've been doing quite a lot of work around using, say, blockchain as an irrefutable token of ownership rather than using sort of share capital within a company. And so when you start looking at sort of decentralized autonomous organizations, you go, actually, that's a really interesting way of co-owning something. It gets mathematically quite complex, but I think over time the whole method of sharing assets will be based on a slightly different economic philosophy than the one we're all using today.
Interesting.
But the idea of owning your own boat, unless you've got the time to use it, in which case it's absolutely the right thing, right? It's like having a second home. If you're at a point in time in your life where you can use it a lot, it makes perfect sense. But for a lot of us, we're working 45 hours, 50, in our case, quite a lot more. You're working, everyone's working flat out. And so I want access to the ocean, and I want to be able to do extraordinary things. And I want to be surrounded by people who are really ambitious about adventure and exploration and research and conservation. It's much easier for me to create that dynamism and to attract the team that I want to really make my experience extraordinary if they're fully engaged, if they're like engaged in a whole program with lots of other owners who are all pushing each other to go off and do this stuff. Because otherwise it's just like I hire a crew and the crew spend 98% of their time polishing a boat in a marina. So it's about how do you fundamentally co-ownership enables you to attract the most ambitious people in the sector, whether it's adventurers or skippers or whatever, because they know that this type of co-ownership program is going to give them the maximum, the best opportunity to go off and do extraordinary things. So that's fundamentally what it's about. It's easier for owners, and you get the best people. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you don't have to find so many berths, which is a bit of an issue these days.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that must be really tough.
Yeah. So you can advertise your business right here on the Boat Princess podcast. We have a worldwide audience of around 31,000 listeners a month of boaters and those in the boating industry. Contact us at the Boat Princess. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so we've talked about these amazing, yachts you've put together, these Explorer yachts, which are quite incredible. But I know you do a few other things as Arxon. Tell me about the Unimog vehicle and where did that name come from?
So I guess in creating Arxon, as I said right at the start, we're really an ocean first business. Our core business is around the marine products we make. But there's a recognition also that adventure doesn't stop when you get to a destination. It really starts there, and it's the interplay between what you do on land and what you do in the ocean that's really interesting. It's where you do most of your diving, most of your free diving. It's where, in our case, we do most of our climbing and things like that. So in creating Arxon, we were always about how do we create this sort of ultimate adventure brand that feels, like a really good, safe destination for me as an adventurer, and a community that really buys into that. So we designed a range of performance gear, and that is designed to take you up Everest if you want to go up Everest, or if you're mad enough to try K2 or Annapurna, those types of things. But also a range of gear that if you just want to go hiking or you're going sailing or stuff like that works really well. So that felt to us like a really good way of putting some glue in the brand that enabled lots of different people to start experiencing what Arxon was about, rather than buying one of our ribs or our large boats or something like that. So it felt much more accessible.
Yeah.
And part of what Arxon's been about is trying to democratize access to adventure. And so one of the things I'd love to do is a canoe, right? So let's do a $500 canoe, super cheap, and everyone can get on the water. But I take that sort of into the overland space, and we started by talking about my father and his love of driving and adventure, and there's nothing quite like these iconic Land Rover Defenders.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got a small business that does ground up restorations of Land Rovers, and then we've done the same with the Mercedes Unimog. So on the Unimog, we've taken 40-year-old vehicles out of the Australian Army.
Okay.
Who have been selling, they've sold off their entire fleet of these things. So we've bought quite a lot of them.
Yeah, that's
and then so we do a ground up restoration on those, and then we put a camper van on the back. And so now you've got a 4x4 Unimog truck that's got a really, can sleep 4 in tide really easily. It's got a galley, it's got a head, and huge tanks. So you can, I think it's got, I think the one we've got at the moment, it's got about 2,500 kilometer range on it. So that's, that's a pretty decent range.
Mm.
And these are just like, when you get in them, it's like, you climb up a ladder to get into the steering wheel, and you're like, let's go, and it just brings this sense of adventure to life. So, so the idea is to sort of be able to create these really wonderful vessels, but then to augment that with a whole raft of other really cool adventure products. And then at the core of the brand is putting a team of people that actually bring experiences to life. So we brought on a guy called Jay Morton, who is a very well-known mountaineer. And so with him and his team, they can take you off on pretty much any land-based expedition that you want to go on, whether that's, trekking and simple things like that, or whether it's climbing some of the highest mountains in the world or crossing Greenland and stuff like that.
Because he's done Everest twice, right?
Yeah, he has. Yeah. It's sort of 10 years in the SAS, and he's quite an amazing guy.
Yeah.
He's very, really inspiring. Really inspiring.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then we've just acquired a business that's the largest.
Just because you were bored, or
no? But we just acquired a business that's the largest provider of adventure sailing holidays.
Oh, okay.
So that enabled, by bringing what Jay and his guys are working on, and this other acquisition we made, bringing those things together, we'll end up, I think, with a really interesting sort of adventure platform.
Yeah, not wrong.
So then it's like, okay, we've got the boats, we've got the overland products, and we've got some quite interesting enduro motorbikes and stuff coming down the line. Electric ones. And then
how are we pleased about that?
And then we've got the clothing, which sort of really acts as the glue, and then the sort of experiences, adventure experiences. So if you bring all that together, you've got this adventure ecosystem where everyone can riff off each other. And it's like, oh yeah, we could do that trip with this boat. We could do this adventure with this Unimog, or we could go and, climb this or dive this or do that. And that just enables you to attract the mavericks, the mental people in the world that want to do all this stuff. And that's really, what you want ultimately is you want the mental people. You want the sort of people that have got a little bit of a glint in their eye.
Well, also the ones that have suddenly, I know as I've got into my 50s, you sort of think, well, I haven't done this yet. I haven't done that yet. And you really think, well, I've got to do it, because otherwise I'm going to be too old to do it. So let's do it.
It's weird, isn't it?
That
sense of urgency, like when you were 18, you're sort of like, there's a different sense of urgency. But I agree with you. I'm nearly 60, but you sort of get a bit older. There's another sense of urgency that comes back, and it's almost like a slap round the face with a wet kipper, isn't it? It's like, wow, time's running out, or, it's not the time's running out. It's just there's something else that kicks in, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the Unimog that they're Australian. They've got to be, we have some of the most rugged country in the world. So that's got to be a vehicle that survives a great deal.
Yeah. And I think, we build all of the overland product in Australia, and some in South Africa, almost all of it in Australia. And look, I took a Tenere, Honda Tenere bike across up from Cairns a few years ago, and that was really the inspiration for doing this overland thing. It was just like, that is such an epic part of the world to go.
It really is.
It's Cape Tribulation, isn't it? At the top,
Yeah,
I've never got that far.
Yeah.
The bike broke down. So,
okay.
So that's why we're going in a Unimog.
No, my husband did a Cape Tribulation motorbiking trip last year. I'm amazed he's still alive. It was, bulls jumping out at him and all sorts of stuff. So, but wow. It's an incredible part of the world to explore. Yeah. But it is really rugged and harsh and tough. Yeah. But I've seen Jeremy Clarkson take a Bentley across the top of the Northern Territory. So, I'm willing to have a go at that.
I'll come with you. Your husband can go on the bike.
Yeah. So, so amazing, brilliant company. So good to talk to you, Jasper. Just the ground that you've brought this from, you're really putting your sense of adventure together with your tech, together with your sheer ambition and ability to put good teams together and make this vision happen. What's the ultimate goal for you with this whole Arxon? What do you really want to see it be for you?
Yeah, I think you can look at it in different ways. I think from a sort of a company perspective, it's really about trying to change people's perception of adventure and what they're capable of doing. And, you do that, I think, by giving people products they can have ultimate confidence in and the support network behind that. And then you help them unlock the potential of those products through expertise and, curated adventures and things like that. But fundamentally, it's about behavior change, isn't it? It's just max out life, live it to the full. We're not here for very long. Do the stuff you're really passionate about. Try and get as many people on board with that idea as possible. And occasionally extraordinary things happen because you're able to juggle all these plates and you've got all these parts of the business. And an example is, a couple of years ago when we were trundling along with this, we got asked if we'd be interested in helping to make a film about the ocean. So we spent the last 2 years filming this 75-minute feature documentary with David Attenborough. And it's like one of these life-changing things where it's in its own right, it's just a 75-minute feature documentary, but it's with an icon of our time. And, he's what, 98 now, and this film will come out in sort of mid 25. But what's fascinating is not the film itself, which is, I think, will be iconic, but is that the impact campaign behind it is setting up 14 community-led marine protected areas around the world, which should be several million square kilometers of ocean. that's extraordinary to me. It's like this little adventure brand got involved in this funny little project, created this extraordinary film that's motivated governments and institutions and philanthropy organizations and a whole community of people to lobby for, to protect millions of square miles of ocean. So that's what I love about Arxen, is just you get to play, all of these sort of scenarios, and some of them are as extraordinary as that. Some of them aren't, right? But I think that's a really life-affirming thing to be able to do stuff like that. And so I'd hope all of our community just feels the passion and feels that they're part of that journey. And hopefully some of them will come and say, "Oh, I've got this great idea. I'd love to do a film about da 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 da."
Yeah.
And that's really what you want, I think, with any business. It's on a trajectory. It's got it's sustainable because it makes money, because we all need to make money. But it's got a purpose behind it that feels, quite rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, amazing. David Attenborough. Oh, how special is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty awesome.
And on a purely selfish note, will the technical gear be going into the female realm?
Yeah. So absolutely. I think the complexity, like the apparel industry, is super complex.
Yes.
And it's almost more complex than the marine space, just because the only way you can make it work is you design a bunch of gear, you buy inventory, and then you sell from inventory, which means it's really capital intensive.
Yeah.
So the short answer is absolutely yes. You just might have to wait a bit.
Fair enough. Because that is actually a real issue for us as females. Technical gear for sailing and so on and so forth is so hard to come by.
Which is outrageous, isn't it? It really is outrageous. But it has been such a sort of male-dominated thing, isn't it? And, I think it's hugely important that, diversity has been sort of overlooked. You look at the average owner of the average marine brand, and they're a middle-aged white bloke. And, that has to change over time. So we need, I don't think it's just more women in the industry, but I think we need much more ethnicity. There's
absolutely.
I haven't seen a boatyard run by a black person anywhere, right? In Europe, at least. Yeah, and it's insane. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it is just a very white middle class industry. So the hope is that changes over time.
Yeah, we need youth, we need ethnicity, we need different cultures. It needs some diversity for sure.
And what's interesting, actually, the easiest way of getting there is probably through these apprenticeship schemes, which is, how do you hire tons of people that are motivated to help rekindle industries? And the UK's decimated its marine industry over the last sort of 70 years. So it's interesting now seeing how the government, with the shipbuilding review that they did, is trying to rebuild a strategic asset. So I think as a time, certainly in the UK, I think it's, the next 10 years in the marine industry should be second to none in terms of growth and ambition. And so as a platform for apprentices, wherever they come from, I think it should be, I think it should be one of the greatest sort of career opportunities there is.
Yeah. And as a female, as you're designing boats and you're creating incredible boats, just a few little things. Can you just keep the helm adaptable for us so we can put our feet down when we're shorter? And those sorts of things actually can make a big difference to women being able to enjoy a boat like that.
It helps that everyone in our engineering team is about 5'8".
Oh, so. Brilliant.
Except Ewan, who's a giant, but everyone else. Yeah. So I think I think we've covered. I'm sure there'll be. I'm sure, like everything we do, it can be improved. But
that's the beauty of having something like this, that you've got you're right in there from the start, designing it to be used for its appropriate use. And I think the innovations you're putting into the boats are just incredible. So it's that's what's lovely about an innovative company like yours doing those things and making these incredible adventures available to people all over the world, which is just staggeringly good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's super fun.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, wonderful thing to do. And I think you look at the, one of the things we set up was this thing called 10% for the ocean, which is if you look at, we were talking earlier about ocean conservation being sort of very, very fragmented. And so such small amounts of money get donated into ocean conservation. So Arxon set this project up called 10% for the ocean, which basically pulls together 70 marine organizations from around the world and creates, it's almost like in financial terms, like an ETF for ocean conservation. So, you put your money in the top and then it gets disintermediated through all of these 70 organizations.
Oh, amazing. And
that funds, I think, about 300 and something projects in 27 countries at the moment. So I love that idea of being able, whether it's, things that we were talking about with, using adventure to redefine how we look at the world. I also love the idea of how do you create new mechanisms to support philanthropy and things like that. So ideas is what keeps us alive, right? And hopefully Arxon's a sort of good incubator or a catalyst for change across a series of different things.
Yeah. So tell everyone how they can see Arxon. Where's the best place to see everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing is online, right? So Arxon.com.
So that's ARKSEN.com.
Yep. And then across the social channels and things like that. But if anyone wants to come and look at a boat, the best place to do that is on the Isle of Wight, where the big boats are, or in Southampton. So that's the best place. If they want to see clothing and unimogs and things like that, they can go, look online or come and see us in London. So we have an office in London, office in Southampton, and an office in Sydney. So
fantastic. Yeah. And where's the location in Isle of Wight? At Cowes?
Yes, in Cowes. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We build with this great yard called White Shipyard, and they've got the biggest Union Jack, I think, in the world, actually, on their gate. So you arrive and it's sort of quite, it's huge. But the history of this yard's amazing because it's where they built the Sunderland flying boats and where they built the hovercrafts, and then they did all the early windmill blades. So it's got this really strong history of making aluminium product. Run by this guy called Peter Morton, who's, a pretty extraordinary sailor, very, very competitive, brilliant sailor. It's a great community.
Amazing. And then your ocean philanthropy, how can we get in touch with that as well?
So again, 10% for the ocean. .org is the
that's written out in words. 10%.
Yeah, 10% for the ocean.org. So it's a long URL.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really it's an extraordinary opportunity to try and democratize. So the problem it tried to solve was that if you look at ocean conservation today, it's very fragmented.
Yeah.
So you've got hundreds of organizations all around the world, each dealing with sort of regional or local problems.
Yeah.
And some of those find it easier to raise capital than others. But a lot of the smaller ones that are, in developing nations and things like that, it's almost impossible for them to raise capital to protect an MPA or to help coral regrowth or eradicate plastic in their locale and stuff. And so you see all these extraordinary projects with these amazing people who are hugely motivated to go and do stuff, but they can't raise the capital to do it. And the large philanthropic organizations are there really trying to say no as much as possible because they're bombarded by people asking for money. And these smaller organizations aren't in a position to go through all those hoops, so they run out of steam or they just don't have the expertise in-house to do it. So 10% for the Ocean tries to take a slightly different approach, which, as I said earlier, aggregates all of these organizations, pulls them into one pot and then offers donors the opportunity to create a collective giving pool, if you like. So you donate into 10% for the Ocean, it then makes grants to all of those underlying projects. So from a consumer perspective, it just gives us a single point of access.
So it's easy action to make a difference. Yeah.
So it's a bit like backing a NASDAQ tracker fund or something like that. So it's like an index of all ocean conservation. Put your money in top, goes there. 10% of the ocean doesn't take a skim, so it's 100% of the funds get allocated. So it's a really transformational idea for these organizations. So again, it's like one of these sort of fantasy projects that an organization like Arxon enables you to bring to life. And that's why I was sort of saying, Arxon's at its best, it's a sort of catalyst for behavior change and idea generation and things like that. So
amazing.
Lots going on.
Jasper Smith, thank you so much for being here. This has been a fascinating conversation. I know our listeners will absolutely love it.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been amazing. It's been lovely to meet you. And the horses going, look, they're coming past again now, but they're in red this time.
They're amazing.
But it's been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time and having all the energy and the inspirations that you have. So what you've achieved, I think, is spectacular.
Thank you
for all your listeners for everything you're doing.
Yeah, amazing. So listeners, a little bit of inspiration there to give a bit back to the ocean. Head off to that site and help our beautiful ocean so that as boaters we can continue to enjoy it, because it is our playground and we need to take care of it. So we'll see you on the water soon. Exciting stuff is happening at the Boat Princess podcast, everyone. And one of those things is a new exclusive content podcast that will be released to those that subscribe. Now, we'll be interviewing people that don't normally go on public interviews, and this won't be a public interview. They'll be hidden behind in our exclusive, amazing content. And then there will also be things like product releases before they're released, all sorts of exciting stuff. So watch this space. Looking forward to bringing it to you. I love you listening to this podcast, and I know so many of you do, but I'd really love to know what you think of it. Please do give us a review. It gives us an idea of what you're looking for from the podcast, but it also helps the podcast to get to an even bigger audience. So next time you listen to us, or maybe even this time, give us a review. Thanks, guys.